it's kind of hectic. People are leaving, people are listening, so I'll just keep talking. So this is really great. I just followed the panel on city tech ecosystems. I'm also going to talk about our ecosystem in Portland, both from the startup side and the tech side. And we have actually quite a few people here from Portland. We have like 12 people, actually, which is really great. So come and talk to us. We have a table. So my name is Catherine, and I work for the Portland Development Commission. And what that is that's the economic development agency for the city of Portland in Oregon. And I have a really awesome job. So my job is to work with early stage startups, and particularly those led by teams that have a woman or a person of color on their team. So I do a lot of ecosystem work in the city. But it would be a bad mistake for me not to say we're talking about building ecosystems. Here are some folks in our ecosystem, but there are many, many more that have put diversity and inclusion first. And I would say over the past several years, this has been building, momentum has been building. These folks are founders, they are people leading programs. The good thing about Portland is we're still fairly a small community, so it's very easy for us to collaborate. And I'm really honored to work with all of these folks and really excited as more groups and more efforts form in Portland. So today it's just, for me, it's one voice and one story, but I'm speaking, my story is a story of a city institution and what an institution can do as opposed to being a program or being an investor. What can the city itself, actually the city, do? So let's talk a little bit about Portland. Oh, there we go. Does anyone know Portland or been there? Like, okay, great. Yeah, it's kind of a nice place, right? It's like got a great quality of life, hang out, drink lots of beer. It's a really great place. And we love to collaborate in Portland. We really believe that there's abundance. There's enough for everyone, especially in the tech community. However, that is kind of the Portland you may see in pictures or whatnot. But we certainly have communities of color. We certainly have communities out in East Portland that do not have access to the resources and connections that everyone else does. And something else that maybe some of you know about Portland is that if you Google whitest city in America, guess what comes up? It's Portland. 3/4 of our population identify as Caucasian white. But we actually, not surprisingly, sorry, I missed this. So this is just to say we are a growing tech community, and here are some numbers from about 5 years ago, kind of putting us on the map in terms of like we're one of the fastest growing economies on the West Coast and one of the fastest growing tech economies. But what I wanted to say is, not surprisingly, when we all look at 2040, our population is going to look very different. And if you look at the top 50 metro areas in the country that are going to experience the most dramatic change in their demographics, Portland is one of them. So even though 3/4 of our population today are Caucasian white, that's going to look more like half in 2040. And right now, if we look at our school-age population, that's about half. If you talk to folks in Portland, they actually are shocked when they hear that. They don't realize that. And we see this as an opportunity because we have a small but growing tech industry and startup community, and we're going to see more diversity in the future. So what we believe is that if we can lay the infrastructure today and create that now, then we can create the culture for the future. So we really see Portland as an opportunity in this space. I want to talk a little bit about the institution that I work for. This sounds weird to say institution, but I work for a government agency, and we have a lot of different relationships, and we are in a place of power and privilege. So we have connections to real estate development for large-scale real estate projects. We also work on small neighborhood redevelopment projects. We work with a lot of nonprofits that work with small businesses out in our neighborhoods, and particularly small businesses of color. And then we also have really extensive relationships in industry, tech being one of them. So that's just to give you a context for who I work for. It's a 95-person agency, and we are publicly funded. This is kind of going fast here. So I just kind of want to call privilege into the room. I know that's probably been called into this conference already and been talked about, but I want to talk about this because it's often something you can't talk about. You can't talk about inclusion and diversity without talking about privilege. But it's also something that I find can be your superpower when you do this work. You really have to understand what is your relationship to privilege. It has a lot of layers, and it's a kind of a lifelong journey, really. I know it's a lifelong journey for me, but it's really important because who we represent as an organization and who we are as an individual has many layers of privilege. So what I want to say today is that what I've realized over the past several years is the actions that we take are dependent upon our relationship with privilege and what your superpower is in that. So these are just kind of two simple lessons. I know we're very tactile at this conference, kind of like what are the solutions? I'm going to talk about kind of some experiments and some rewards that we've been able to see in Portland, and kind of how we understand as an agency what role we can play. So amplify voices is one. When I say this, I want to be really clear. This kind of sounds like, oh yeah, just talk about diversity. I want to be clear. This is about action, and this is about bringing people to the table of decision. I heard a lot of talk about like bringing people on boards. Yes, yes, and all of these things. But as an agency, what we can do is we can bring those people into the conversation, and we can bring them into the networks of power because we have those networks. And so there's a lot more work beyond what I'll talk about here, but this is just sort of a simple thing, right? Amplify voices. When we started about 2 years ago, we're the government agency, and we have relationships in the startup community, and we're sort of asking ourselves, what can we do? How can we help move this conversation forward? And in Portland, do we have talented entrepreneurs, innovation, thought leaders of color? Yes. Are they very visible? Sometimes. But we have some really amazing individuals, some here. And as well as there are quite a few people that were leading programs that were kind of talking about it. But we're like, there hasn't been like a broader conversation in the dominant culture community about this. This is hopefully something that we can do. So we started an initiative called Include, Innovate, Invest Portland. That's the hashtag. And so just kind of tracking a conversation on Twitter, really trying to make it more of a public dominant culture conversation is what we attempted to do. And really now I'm in the business of kind of sponsoring events, supporting other people doing the work, because we kind of got that started, and now we can really support others doing the work and amplifying their work. But I want to talk about, when I'm talking about privilege, like colleagues of mine that they have a different relationship to privilege, and they bring a different superpower to the table. So my colleague Stephen, he grew up in the African American community in Portland. He is a business advisor. He works tirelessly with entrepreneurs of color. This for him is, he has a superpower in this, and he can convene the community in a way that obviously we cannot, and he is working that room in a way that I cannot, but I can work the room in a different way. But it's really hard. Like what I've noticed is it's really hard as a person of color to convene your community oftentimes, and when someone can do it, you take notice and you really support them. So I also want to talk about one, because I learned, one thing that's really simple for me to do is dish out a couple $1,000 to take some folks from my city to conferences like this to get them connected to larger national affinity networks. I think that is great for everybody, and also folks can kind of get some inspiration and some learning. So we went down to the Latino Startup Alliance Summit in December, and connected with some folks who had done a Startup Weekend Latino in California, got some learning, and then came back to Portland, formed a team, and did an amazing event. Again, really hard to convene that community, but he used his superpower to really make that happen. And so my job is to support him, amplify the voices, and start kind of bringing more attention to it. So again, seems like a simple thing, do what you say. But it's really funny, we always you keep talking about diversity, but what are you going to do about it? And this is really the issue that we keep coming up against. Why are there barriers? Well, there's, when you talk about privilege in this country, and the hundreds of years that have kind of privileged some over others, it's an uncomfortable conversation. I can like feel folks here even feeling uncomfortable. But really, why is it so hard for people to actually do it? But what we said is, okay, we're going to do something. We have to do something. If no one else is doing something, let's kind of like put people's feet to the fire a little bit. So my colleague Jared, he's the liaison to the tech industry, and this is kind of what was happening, right? Our tech companies are like, yeah, we care about diversity, but and so we're like, you know what? Let's just get in the room and let's hash this out. What are we willing to do as a community? Again, we love to collaborate in Portland. What are we going to do as a community? So the companies came together and they came up with 5 tenets, kind of 5 principles, 5 actions that they were going to do collectively, including together they were going to decide what the data, our diversity data would be, and then collect together. Some companies will reveal that data separately, some will not. These are all privately held companies, by the way. But we decided that as a community, at least we can start tracking the data and we can start sharing how we can work on this issue together. It's still early, so I mean, there's more to come, but at least as a community, we came together to say we will put a stake in the ground. And I want to talk about a program that I run, which is a publicly backed incubator called Startup PDX Challenge. And so last year we said we're going to make diversity of the founding teams a criteria. And by the way, what this means is we're looking for folks who are typically underrepresented at the helm of companies. We believe that to really infuse a diverse and inclusive culture into your company, you need the leaders to be those people. That's going to change the culture of this entire ecosystem. So we said this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're looking for. I would say in the startup community, do we have pushback? Yeah. Some people were like, oh, you're really going to do this? You're going to limit pipeline? But we said, no, this is what we're doing. And we got 6 stellar teams, and we're doing another one, and pipeline looks really good. So even in the whitest city in America, I mean, we found some really, really amazing companies that most folks in the ecosystem had no idea about. So I'm just going to go ahead and just say this again, something people always say, right? But authentic relationships, from my experience, is really understanding your relationship to privilege. If you don't have some cognizance of that, then it's really tough to be authentic with somebody. And so I just kind of want to end with that. But also here are some of my colleagues from PDC, and we have a table out there, and we also have lots of people here from Portland, so we're really excited to talk to y'all. Thank you.